look at it, and it looks and sounds like amateur hour to me. It's so rudimentary, but at the same time, I can watch the kind of methodology gradually grow. And I feel that was a central component to my development, because I really wanted to, every video, it seemed like I was progressing a little bit further. And in all honesty, the book kind of came together because I wrote it really based off of the stuff that I did to get to that point.
That's great, man. Listen, I really want to know, why did you pick the topic, how to practice, or how has your practice changed during a pandemic? What made that be on the front 40 of your mind?
So living in an apartment, especially in New York, neighbors, noise complaints, and especially at this point, people are quite grouchy. So people have been locked away. It's people have a short fuse right now. So I was henceforth relegated to practicing on pads, pillows, and this electronic drum set with the sound off. And I got all these comments on the videos, you know, turn the sound on, blah, blah, blah. And my whole thing was, if I turn that sound on, I'll be on the street because I'll probably be getting evicted. So, or I can't play anymore because I'll get a noise complaint, and that's bad. So I was relegated to practice on various surfaces that were not ideal, especially because my rehearsal space in Brooklyn, which I call the sweat box, closed down. We had to move rehearsal spaces, and you had to wear a mask the whole time you were in there for obvious reasons, COVID safety. Doing that, playing in a mask for hours in this hot little rehearsal room was not exactly my idea of a great practice session. So
Makes sense.
Yeah. And when I practice, and this is something that I emphasize to students and as well as to everybody, I consider it real practice, where it's the part where Jojo Mayer talks about it. You're working on stuff you don't know. And one of my old college professors said, if you sound good while you're practicing, you're not really practicing. So
yeah, that's good. I agree with that.
Thank you for saying that. Thank you for saying that.
I've got some students that are really good at some things, and that's about all they want to practice. So I hear you. Hey, Bart, did you have a specific question for Alex?
You know, I have questions, but I think more than anything, I just want to say, man, I'm really excited to have you here, Alex. You know, watching your videos and stuff like that is, yeah, it's amazing. And I do like what you said about, you know, Facebook. You get those things, you know, 8 years ago, you know, 6 years ago, and you can see the progression, right? And I think when you said that, that really hit a chord with me, because I think a lot of times people don't see that progression. You know what I mean? Like they get so stagnant because of what another thing you just said. You know, if you sound good while you're practicing, you're not practicing. When you're sitting at your drum set in your shed, no matter where it is or what it's called, you know, the sweat box, I love that. You're not supposed to sound good. I tell all of my students that the stuff that, you know, the stuff that's going to make you a great drummer is not fun to do. It's not fun to sit there on a practice pad or like you showed on a mattress and sit there and play something that you can't do. And so it gets very frustrating. I really like that. How do you, so I guess my question would be, especially given your amount of independence, watching you play is incredibly impressive. That's got to be, the frustration level at times has got to be pretty like, God, I know what to do intellectually. I know what I want to do, but I can't do it. How do you work through that? How do you chip away at that a little bit at a time, or do you find big leaps? How do you do that?
So it's a little bit of a time. It's a little bit at a time, I should say. Right. And it was always, whenever I'd sit down, I had a goal, a new pattern, a new idea, and then what I would do, the first books that I worked through for this, I studied Jason Gianni's method when I was at Drummers Collective, because I took privates there since I was 12. Wow. And I studied Jason's method. Wow. And then because I had a foundation of that, I was able to move to the Marco Miniman and Thomas Lang books. Now, with those, one thing that I do like that they emphasize is every different combination of limbs. So you would have top to bottom, hands, feet, feet, hands. Then you'd have right side, left side, right side, then cross limb independence, where it would be right hand, left foot, left hand, right foot. So whenever I take an idea, let's say, be it a paradiddle, double strokes, I do it through all combinations of those limbs with the independence then against it. So it was this real methodology and this long process of really figuring this stuff out. And certain combinations of limbs are better than others for me. And narrowing it down to where I was focusing on my weak points specifically. And every time I'd get that paradiddle against grouping of 5 between 2 limbs or something along those lines, that was a big step. And the other thing is, because I have a recording studio in Pennsylvania, I had two different renditions of an exercise or a phrase. There is play it ready, and then there's record it ready. And they're 2 very different things.
Wow, that's impressive, man. Thank you, Alex. I appreciate that. We're talking about your book as well on Hudson. You can get through Hudson's website. And speaking of books, I'd like to introduce Rick Stojak from Rick Stojak.
Hey.
Thanks for being on the Zoom, and thank you, Jeremy, for helping us. And Rick, what do you have? Do you have any questions for Alex?
Oh man, a list this big. It would take hours when you have a player of Alex's caliber, and it's a pleasure to meet you, Alex. Thanks for joining us. Clearly, you're a super cool dude. New York, we got a big New York connection. I'm a Connecticut guy, even though I'm living in San Diego and started my first gigs in New York City. So it just brings back memories, and I just love the energy there. And obviously, you're a cat who's contributing to it, so that's really good. So thanks for all you're doing for the drumming community too. So the first thing I want to know is what does your shirt say, man? I see. Well, you got to show us, man. It looks pretty funny. Education is important, but
drums is important.
I had to. We're on a drum teacher.
That's awesome. That is awesome, man. I would give a rim shot, but I'd break my keyboard. I've got stuff all over my snare drum right now.
Oh man! Hopefully I didn't peek out when I did that. Well, one thing I've noticed with my student base during COVID is that people actually have more time to practice. So obviously this is a period where we can grow as a player. Whoa, Siri on my iPad just said hello. Sorry. Siri's listening to me over here. Holy cow. So this is a great opportunity to start practicing and going back to what you guys were talking about. Everybody just wants to sound good, and we've got to step back and practice and work it out. It might not always sound amazing. So anyway, I think it's just a great time for growth for people. And so what I'm wondering about is your process for warm-ups, and not just on the hands. Everyone always talks about hand warm-ups, but I know you do a lot of extreme metal and all, and there's a lot of feet involved with that. So I'm wondering about a little bit of like, if you do any feet warm-ups and just technique for building up your double bass.
That is, so there's, oh my God, there's so much that has gone into that, goes into that, and continues going into that. I will say this, that for warm-ups and in general now just playing, my resolve during COVID, however long it lasted, is to only play a left-handed kit.
Oh, cool. Wow, that's cool.
And
wow.
My whole thing, and on my electronic kit at home, I only play it left-handed. And I have found that my double bass has gotten better now than it has ever been, especially with a lot of phrases I never thought I'd be able to do. Flams, hybrid rudiments. Yeah. And so that to me is...
He plays those with his feet, by the way.
Yeah, I do. Actually, I've worked out the Alan Dawson book. I've worked the Rudimental Ritual, I should say. The Cerrone book and the Wilcoxon book, all in the feet. I've done all 3.
And so
brilliant.
Warm up with your.
So one warm up that I'll do with my feet. That's a lot of text. One warm up that I'll do with my feet is so let's say if I'm on the lefty kit, I'll keep a quarter note key, let's say in my right hand and in my left hand and left foot, and I can even do this on the floor. You just go alternating singles. And gradually increase the tempo doing rhythmic scale groups. So you have 5, 6, 7, 8.
Nice.
Nice.
So
That
going
is killer.
through that, then doing it with my right side. So you.
We need to get a book here, man.
That's awesome.
Cool.
So you can actually hear it on the floor, which is something else I try to do, is make it so that when I'm doing this stuff, I actually can hear my feet on the floor. And if my feet are solid on the floor, they're going to be great on the damn pedals.
I agree with
Oh,
that.
I love that.
Yeah.
Love that.
I have a question. Are you a proponent of when you're playing? Are you playing heel up or heel down?
Oh, oof. Heel up.
Heel up.
But I don't
And
think.
do you play into the head? Like if this is the head and this is the beater, are you into the head or are you kind of bouncing off of the head? Or are you letting the beater come out of the head?
I'm primarily into the head, and I know I'll definitely get some flack for that from some people. I'm primarily into the head. However, bouncing off the head, so burying the beater versus letting the beater versus an open sound, there is a use for both. Now, it's the same way when on a snare drum or a tom, let's say, you want a certain stroke sound, wrist or fingers. Each one is very different. Right. So that to me is a similar thing of tonality with the feet. And so in working towards playing marching pieces with my feet and kind of getting that same control, muting and doing those different strokes actually is very important to me. So I try to be apt with both, but I will say my preference is to bury the beater.
Hey, you know what? That makes me wonder again. That just might be off topic, but we talked about practicing during a pandemic, and I was wondering. We talk about getting students to practice before in a previous roundtable, and one of our other friends here is Jeremy Steinkohler, the author of Finding the Groove. And I'd like to know if Jeremy has a question for Alex about practicing during COVID or anything you're wondering about, Jeremy.
Yeah, Alex, first of all, thank you so much for coming. It's an honor to have you with us, and so it's just so cool to have these amazing drummers from around the world come down and just talk like normal people, which they of course are, like we all are, right? We're all just guys trying to figure out how to do this better and share our wisdom and our knowledge and learn from one another. So thank you. One of the things that I find with my students, especially during COVID, some of them are practicing them a lot. Some of them are practicing really diligently. They've got all this time and they're super happy. They can focus on drums now without all these other distractions. And then others are really struggling to find the time and find the motivation. A lot of people are just not feeling it right now. And so I feel like my job as a teacher is to try to help motivate them and, give them stuff to work on that's going to make them feel like they're making progress in an effective way. And I've watched some of your videos and they're unbelievably impressive with the independence and the polyrhythmic stuff you got going on. Really cool. One of the things that I want to ask you about is how you figure out what to work on, what to practice, because I get some adult students who come to me and they'll bring this stuff and it's like, wow, that's really cool what you're talking about. But man, you've got to go through A, B, C, and G before you can get to this stuff at letter Z. Right? Mm-hmm. And some of the stuff you're working on is super sophisticated, super cool. Obviously, you've taken many, many steps to get there. I want to ask you about how you think about what to practice, what's relevant, what's critical path, what's to get you to your goals.
So I'm a huge proponent of ambidexterity. That is one of the biggest things that I emphasize to students is we work, let's say, on the John Riley book. So Beyond Bop Drumming, Art of Bop Drumming, both. I think learning jazz is very important, especially independence. Jazz was the foundation to me of independence. I went to NYU for jazz. So, I know people know me as a metal guy, but I actually have a degree in jazz performance, and I do translate that into my independent study. So I insist that we work through syncopation, Advanced Techniques for the Modern Drummer, the John Riley books. But the catch is, and I know Ed Soph makes his students work through them open-handed. So I make them do that. But what I add on is we're then going to do it on a left-handed kit too.
Wow.
So everything that I believe someone practices should be practiced all at least those 3 ways.
Man, I ain't taking no lesson from you, man. I'm not gonna.
You're scaring the hell out of me.
Oh man, I'm sweating.
So that's my methodology behind that is I'm a huge proponent of thinking both ways, especially because to me the biggest problem, and that I found in students, but not just students, it's in people in general that talk about their phrasing, or they don't double bass too. This is a huge part of it, where they talk about their phrasing and that they're not feeling comfortable at the kit. And a lot of people, especially during COVID, have been asking about double bass and practicing double bass because they've had time to practice it. But when you do practice double bass, you hit that wall of people like, my God, I can't do this. This is really, I'm having a lot of trouble. So my philosophy on this, you are only as good as the weakest link in the chain. So if your left hand is bad, your left foot is bad, you will fundamentally you will be imbalanced. And I feel that that's a big thing for me that helped, was improving my left side and letting my left side think more like my right, because then it was aware of all the different micro motions, as I call them, between these large muscle groups that extend all the way through your torso.
So when you get somebody that's an adult student who's proficient at playing the drums and wants to do your gnarly patterns, but his left side is shot and cannot get there, like Jeremy was implying, do you have a plan of how you get that guy up to that level? And if so, what is that plan?
Yes. Okay, so first things first. I insist that students run stick control with their left side. Take the page of stick control, George. George.
Right, down.
And it's you just do the different measures of singles, double.
Oh, okay, I get it. Yeah, cool.
Omit the right hand part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if the whatever you would do on the right hand, you apply to the left foot.
Exactly.
Fantastic. Okay.
That's the biggest one for me that I believe is important, is getting that balance together.
And where do you get the book Stick Control? Is that George Lawrence?
That's George Lawrence Stone.
Okay.
Right there.
Yeah.
Oh, there it is. You get it right there.
Best-selling drum book of all time, written in 1935.
You can do so much with that.
Everywhere.
Oh man, that's the truth,
yeah.
isn't it?
Then what I insist is, in order to develop balance, do stick control in your left side and keep a quarter note in another limb. Let's say your left hand. So we count 16, 1 E into 2 E into 1 E into 2 E into 4 E into 1 E into 2 E into 3 E into 4 E. So the goal being that then you're incorporating another limb to help kind of shift the balance and feel as your different limbs align.
All right, thanks, man. Listen, hey, Jeremy, I wanted to ask you about how much time we have left in this.
I want to point out on my screen when we started, it said it was broadcasting live, and then that went away. So I'm not sure that this is going out live, but we're recording it in any case. So even if it's not going out live, it'll get out there.
So I think we've got, according to my clock, about 20 minutes left, and I want to make the most out of you, Alex. Okay, so let's go ahead and let me know how you specifically have changed your practice because of the pandemic. What has been a direct change because of the pandemic?
So every day, there's the Murder Hands, which was the group that Tobias Ralph, myself, John Longstreth, and Lou Santiago Jr. came up with.
John Longstreth, another trick artist, isn't he?
Yep.
Nice.
I think so, or John was, I believe.
I signed him. I thought he was.
Really?
Yeah, I was the guy that signed him when I worked A&R at Trick.
My God.
I guess he left.
Yeah, I think he's on ACD or something.
Unbelievable. Sorry.
Yeah, it's all good. So we all came up with Murder Hands, which was our hand workout routine that we all did together and contributed. And Murder Hands went viral, and our video ended up getting 1 million views.
Oh,
So
awesome.
Murder Hands suddenly was this thing. And I've been continuing to run Murder Hands online, which is every couple days I'll run our routine. Now, that has kept me motivated to do some hand workouts that are not fun. And then Tobias and I will do another workout later in the afternoon. We've tried to do this daily, and they're hard. They're really not fun. They're very difficult. They're physically just really exhausting. But when I'm doing them with other people, we push each other, especially the Murder Hands crew. We all sort of are there pushing each other, and I think that that's a really good inspiration behind just in general practice. And so I found that participating in stuff like that and having that goal of I need to do this every day, or I'm scheduled to do this every day, let's do it, that's been really helpful.
So you practice more now?
Yeah, actually, for the most part, I'm probably practicing as much as the most I've done since I was working on the book videos, or working on the book when I was originally kind of in the stretch leading up to the book release. I was just working on that stuff nonstop. So I'm probably doing a good 6 hours a day, 6 to 8.
Cool.
Wow.
Well,
Hey, Alex,
then
I have a question for you.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh, go
Rick.
ahead, Bart.
No, Rick, it's
Well,
all
I'm wondering, Alex, just what the process is for when someone takes a lesson from you during COVID and how you're finding new students. Is it just pad work, or are you both on sets, and how you pull that off? And our audience is a lot of drum teachers. So any advice on drum teachers for developing their base
Yes,
and building up their business?
One thing for me has been pad work, especially because the videos I put up were with those tiny little pads. So it was this like accuracy, or it's tiny little pads or pillows, just showing that like you could get a lot of mileage out of a pad and a pillow, considering it's like a snare drum and a floor tom.
Right.
So you could literally turn that into a drum set in an apartment and then use your legs on the floor. And there you had basically an imitation drum set.
That's cool.
I have a question in regards to, you always get the question from students, how long is it going to take me to play the drums? And, I always tell them, I don't know, because I'm still learning. It's a lifetime, right? I don't care. It's like Kenny Aronoff says, I'm not the greatest drummer around, but I'm committed to being the best drummer that I can be, and I love it so much. Do you find that, and I'm not talking like the Murder Hand stuff and everything like that, but when you're working on this crazy independence, do you find that a long session of practice on one given subject, maybe the stick control thing you're talking about, let's say you take one exercise out of stick control, right left, but you apply it to your left side, do you find that a long period of practice, like a 2-hour practice session doing that, will gain you more than a shorter, like, okay, I'm going to do this for 30 minutes? Do you feel that a long focused or a short focused is better? What do you find?
So I found that I think it's just because I get bored easily and have a short attention span with this stuff. I found that I wanted to try and make practice as efficient as possible. So in regards to the short focus, what I would do is I take that pattern and do it for, let's say, 10 minutes.
Perfect.
Then I would try and add something over it, or do it in a different limb combination, and then try and add some independence layer to it. So I was working on multiple things at once.
Right.
Technique, endurance, independence, and then that pattern.
Do you automatically, because of the speed metal thing, do you automatically, like, sorry, Chip, I didn't mean to talk over you, buddy. I apologize for that.
It's all good. I was just saying, great topic to talk about in the future, efficiency of practice.
Yes.
Right. Do you automatically jump? I was going to ask about a metronome. Of course, you practice with the metronome, but do you automatically go from, 80 beats a minute to 200? How do you stair step that to get that stuff happening? Tempos, fast, speed stuff.
I believe in a few things. usually when it comes to metronome work, I try and move up 1 or 2 BPM at a time if I'm comfortable with something. And so I can find that tempo threshold where I'm right on the edge of falling off, but it's also comfortable. So I believe in finite metronome work that way. Like it's like a fine-tooth comb, basically.
Yes.
You want to make it so that it's very accurate and you're playing with articulation and precision, because you could do this stuff, but if it's not articulate, aligned, and in time, it's a party trick.
One of the things I noticed about your playing is very clean and very, very specific. And when it comes down to the double bass patterns that you're doing, I was kind of wondering, I have to ask, man, do you have younger students who are just starting that are interested in double bass, and how do you deal with their interest in double bass and kind of steer them in that direction? Like, do you do goals with your students? Do you sit there and talk about expectations in that way?
So I primarily don't. I usually, if I do get a younger student, I just feel like I'm not as good of a teacher for young students or more beginner level. So I have friends that have degrees in music education. So I usually will send them to those people. Then, so I usually try and do advanced, intermediate, advanced, and up. But when it comes to setting goals with double bass, and I have noticed some students will say, and people that I'm helping right now will say, I'm having trouble with this tempo. I feel like I'm starting square one every day. And my whole thing with that is, the way that I describe it is, you have to break down the mechanics of it first. And I feel like a lot of people want to start double bass and just are like, they want to play fast. They see these guys doing this absurd stuff, especially in the era of modern metal. I mean,
yeah, like,
but no, I'm not like, but my feet, I'm about, if I like, okay, if my top was 240 with double strokes, like loud double strokes, we could say, okay, maybe that's equivalent to singles. I've seen 280 and even up, people doing that in their feet.
Crazy.
So you see that, and not only that, they make it look easy. So you see that and you're like, oh, I want to do that. It looks so easy. Getting to that point, not so much. So what I say is, you need to break it down more into a mechanics thing of bigger muscles activating your core muscles, your quads, even your lower back. Really thinking about it that way, so you're getting the most out of every single muscle system and your balance as well. And I found that even just making students aware of more of the larger muscles working and more of that type of system actually gets a lot of results with double bass. Then once they're more aware of that and balance behind the set and understand the control, then we move on to more advanced stuff.
that's kind of like a karate instructor who somebody walks off the street and wants to be a black belt, and the instructor's just like, well, we don't really just do that in a week. It takes some time and dedication. Very good. Jeremy, did you have any final questions for Alex tonight before we wrap up our show?
Make a comment on this subject. You know, I always tell my students that if you're practicing something wrong, you're getting good at getting it wrong, right? Because the thing that you keep repeating is the thing that you get better at, that neural pathway, that coordination pattern, that timing. And so a lot of the time, the hardest part I find with my students to get something right isn't about understanding it. It's about getting the ego out of it. And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier about sounding good when you're practicing. And, you know, it really is all about being able to play something evenly controlled, like you said, just right below that threshold tempo where you're able to hold on to it and without playing it sloppily. And then as you sit there, that becomes more comfortable. And then you're able to raise that threshold without ever actually going past it and getting sloppy in your practice. So I'm curious, like, I'm guessing with your stuff, especially, which is so technically challenging, you get a lot of students who, like, they're chomping at the bit all the time to, like, get to the next place, get to the next thing, play it faster, play it faster. And I'm wondering just if you have any thoughts or suggestions about what you say to them. I guess you kind of just said it to some extent, you know, to keep them disciplined and focused on the prize.
One thing when it comes to discipline and that type of stuff in that realm is I will say, when you think you have it down, take a video of yourself or record yourself.
Yeah.
Half the time you think you've got it down, you'll listen back
Yep.
and it sounds terrible. And I know I'm guilty. I remember the first time I heard myself playing double bass on a recording back, and I said, "Oh, there's no way it's this bad." It's just a lie. It's
Yep.
the same thing with the metronome. You can't say the metronome is speeding up. That's your problem. You're tracking.
I do it all the time.
I have that you know what? I have that problem. My metronome slows down all the time, and it pisses me off. It's moving all over the place. I actually, I have a question that's a bit off subject, but it was something you touched on. You talked about muscle groupings, right? And stuff like that. I'm a big proponent of, I've worked out. I've always tried to do something to keep myself physically in shape. I'm not, Joe Muscle guy or anything like that. But I've always tried to keep myself physically in shape because of the demands of playing drums. I mean, at any given performance, you're up there running 20 miles a night. So I'm a big yoga person. I love yoga. I've been doing yoga for years. I like to simply go out and hike, right? Is there anything that you talk to your students about for physical fitness? I know maybe that's a bit off subject. And if so, what are your exercise regimes like that you do?
May I say something real quick? Bart, I think that's dead on the topic, because we are talking about if your practice has changed during COVID, how do you shape, because drumming is so physical? So yeah, that's a great question. I want to know the answer to it too, Alex.
So for me, what my a workout routine would be and is a lot of core maintenance and a lot of core strength, because when you're sitting on the drums, you want this to stay still as your arms and legs move.
Very much.
And especially strengthening your back, your upper back. So, push-ups are great. Yoga planks are really good.
Yep.
Those Superman poses where you have your arms up and you flex your back and bring your hands down like that. Those are really good. Then another thing I do is a lot of kind of like lunges and squats and stuff with weights, because you want to keep your hips and your glutes and that whole area very strong and in shape, because when I was not as in shape and I try and play this stuff, it was really not good. And I find that being physically fit, especially for very technical drumming, is extremely advantageous. So I'd almost consider that part of your practice routine.
Oh yeah, completely.
Thank you so much, man.
I'm gonna add a little tip that I got, not to name drop, up from my brother-in-law Gene Hoagland, for developing double bass, and he wears ankle weights.
He does, yes.
And
boots.
Yeah, and he wears his big boots, and man, he'll wear those in practice. We rehearse at the same studio, so he's wearing them here, and then he wears them on gigs. At the end of the gig, he'll take the ankle weights off, and his feet are really flying at that point. So that's a great tip for building strength and endurance.
I remember watching Tommy Aldridge play. Tommy Aldridge is one of my favorite drummers, playing with Doc Martens on. And I was like, man, how do you do that?
Yeah.
Tommy,
hey Alex,
favorite. So that's those guys.
Tommy's just come on, that guy's awesome.
Alex, so before we sign off, everybody's going to want to know how they get a hold of you, how they find you, and are you working on any recording projects so people can hear what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, well, okay, so primarily during COVID, I'm currently working on a solo grindcore. Well, it's an extreme metal project with my guitarist friend, and I call it contemporary era grind, and the reason is that given the amount of misinformation that is spread during COVID, I was able to grab quotes of my favorite stuff that I've seen on social media, turn them into lyrics, which will therefore be streamed.
Oh, that's nice.
So some of the gems that I found are pretty good in this day and age.
Yeah.
And so I'm doing that, and then I've just been doing random tracks for people. But a big thing that I've been doing is working on my second book, Ultimate Progressive Drumming Volume 2, and I call it the Double Drummer Effect. And that's
cool.
That it is to make you sound like it's two drummers playing at once. So that's the main goal of it. And
man, dude, my head is already loaded halfway through your book.
So that's that's the second one, and this one will start where the first one left off, and so yeah, this one's it's very difficult. In fact, I don't even. In some ways, I feel like I'm just doing it as a vanity project. I'm just like, who's gonna buy this? Like, you know?
Well, that leads to I mean, how is some of this stuff just like exercises for like a brain teaser type of thing, or do you find that some of them are all of them musical? Are they, you know? And I know extreme metal and stuff, but how musical are they?
I try and actually keep things musical, and
Cool.
one of the ways that I try and do that is voicings, movement, and when you're doing this stuff, create melodies. You want it to almost sound like, let's say you're doing a grouping of 7 in your right side. Grouping a 7 on one surface sounds pretty square. Move it between 3 toms, and suddenly you have a melody happening
Right.
there. Same thing in your left side. Instead of doing a grouping of 5 on one surface, move it between an auxiliary tom and an auxiliary snare to create an alternating backbeat against the 7. So you're creating 2 melodies at the same time.
I watched a video of you doing that this morning. That what you just described. I watched a video of you doing that, and that, you know, and talk about completely polar opposites, but it was so melodic. It kind of reminded me of almost like Steve Smith. You know, Steve Smith to me is like a super melodic player. You listen to him play and there's a melody in what he does. You could isolate those drum tracks and it's a song in and of itself. And that's what I thought this morning. I was watching this one video. I was like, man, that is really, it's like a little symphony going on. You know, it's very, very impressive, man. My hat's off to you. Great drumming.
Dude,
Great
man,
drumming.
you're an amazing drummer and a really good friend. I'm so glad that you joined us on the Drummers Education Network.
Pleasure. Thank you for
Do you
having
have
me.
any final thoughts?
Yeah, just find me on Facebook, Alex Cohen Drums. You can find my profile. I have the Ultimate Progressive Drumming, the little red book. And Alex Cohen Drums is my artist page. I'm on Instagram as well, Alex Cohen Drums. I should be better about my YouTube channel, but Facebook, just in my crappy rehearsal space where the Wi-Fi wasn't very good, things uploaded to Facebook better. So that was kind of why I kind of stuck to Facebook. But yeah, please find me. Always
Could you do us a favor?
Mm-hmm.
Could you think about putting together your favorite books list and email that to me so I can share it with the guys?
Yeah, I'll do that right now for sure.
Oh, awesome.
I have a very important question. Very
Okay.
important.
Okay.
Alex, favorite pizza place in New York City?
Oh,
Everybody write this down, whatever it is.
okay.
Yeah.
So there's
All right.
huge difference between.
Hold on. I think you're going to start a fight here between Alex and Jeremy, Rick.
All right, Jeremy, let's hear yours.
So Italian Village on 79th and 1st.
That's a good one.
You know that place?
I do. What I like, so to me, okay, and you can correct me. There are 2 types of pizza in New York. There is gourmet pizza and then street pizza.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
Street pizza is the slice you carry around when you're on the subway.
Yeah.
So Italian Village is great.
That's what I'm talking about.
Joe's Pizza is great. I love Joe's. I'll stick by it. The Bleecker Street Nana slice is still really good. It's a little contrived, but Bleecker Street Nana slice is great. Those are like my 3 go-tos. Those are definitely 3. Then when it comes to gourmet pizza, it is between Giuliana's and Lucali's.
So
Okay, wait a minute now. Hold up. One of the
Sounds like you go in there, you're going to get shot.
one of the complaints I have about you, Alex, is I want you to just pick one of those, man. Pick one.
One,
Oh, that's tough.
Lucali's.
All right, we got. Well, thank you.
All right.
Appreciate the time.
Alex, you are awesome,
Okay.
buddy.
Thank you, man. Thank you
Thank
for
you,
having
Alex.
me.
great to have you.
It's an honor.
Great having
right.
you, buddy.
All right.
On you guys, I'm gonna call Bart real quick after we get off and ask him some other questions, and then we hope you enjoy the rest of the day. And if you haven't suggested your fellow drum teacher friend to come join our group, please send the invite out. Okay, guys?
Awesome.
Thank you, everybody.
Alex.
Thank you, Chip.
Goodbye.
Great meeting you, Alex. Keep on it, man.
Bye, everyone.
Take care, brother.